Hi, it's Christine Peckstein, and welcome to episode 77 of Kicking Your Butts. Today, the focus of our show, again, we're talking about boundaries, as we've been talking about uncovering this in-depth area for the entire month of June, but today we're talking about calling the fouls as it has to do with boundaries. In the first 2 weeks of June, we covered boundaries as they relate to protections of the self and our family and our freedoms, the preservation. So we specifically focused on protections and preservation of our morals, beliefs, religion, and other freedoms of the self and our families, and how that relates to where and how we choose to live, or where we have infringement or force from the outside coming in and eroding our boundaries that we want to set for our lives. We've also looked inward at embracing boundaries that we set for ourselves and for our families, because they are designed to keep us safe, free, healthy. Boundaries are good. We need them. So today what we're going to focus on is calling the fouls as it relates to boundaries. I want to say for the SOLMA students, quickly, SOLMA is the School of Life Management Academy. If you are a student of mine over at SOLMA, then the additional video assignments and teachings from this lesson, just like your previous lessons on all of these, will be over at moveintoaction.com. Follow the link to SOLMA, to the school. You'll log in and your stuff will be there waiting for you. And we're going to focus on calling the fouls in our 9 different life areas. And I will guide you guys through that over at SOLMA. So if you have questions, or if you're needing your materials to bring it up now, head to moveintoaction.com, click on SOLMA, and you will find it. Okay, so concerning boundaries for the rest of us, for everybody else who's listening, concerning boundaries of all sorts, whether we have them from outside sources or from the self, because they're boundaries that we've decided to set for ourselves, we have 2 choices regarding boundaries. And I want you to think about this as we move through this episode. The first choice is that you can resist temptation to cross the lines of the boundaries that have been set for you, that have been given to you by an outside influence, or that you have set yourself. So that's one option. You can choose to resist temptation to cross those lines. You do not have to give in to the boundaries that have been set. Or 2, you can give into it, and you can decide to take your chances and see what happens if you decide to cross a boundary that's been set for you, given to you, or that you have decided to create for yourself or for your family for your protection or your preservation. Now, choosing option 2, let's take a look at that. If we just decide to give into it and take our chances, what are we looking at here? Let's dive into that a little bit deeper. Option number 2, just giving into it and taking our chances, that requires that we also embrace that our decisions, the rights to choose, to make those decisions, to either cross a boundary or to live by it, means that we have the responsibility and we are expected to face the consequences of our chosen actions. If we choose to move beyond a boundary that is designed to keep us safe or to preserve us, then we choose to deal with those consequences. So we have to remember also that with rights come responsibilities. With the right to set a boundary, you have the right to set a boundary for you and your family. With the right to set boundaries, we get to follow them. And we get to follow the ones that we set for ourselves. They're designed to keep us out of trouble, because sometimes we know and we admit what our temptations and weaknesses are. We don't like to do that, but we can, and it's helpful and healthy if we do, because we know what our temptations and weaknesses are. Nobody knows us better than us when it comes to that. An outsider is not going to understand you as much as you're going to understand yourself. And you know what is going to harm you, or is not healthy for you, or is not good, and so you have the right to set a boundary to keep you away from that. You can either honor that boundary, or you can choose to go against it and cross the line, but then there are going to be natural consequences that are going to be something that you may have to contend with. You're going to have to deal with those, and it's expected if we're going to move outside of the safety of our boundaries. Now, what I want to talk to you about right now is calling foul. That's the title of this episode, calling foul. When we have boundaries, when we create boundaries for ourselves, we have to know when and how to call the fouls. It's like baseball. It goes out of bounds. It's a foul ball. It's no good. We don't want to make fouls, right? We need to stay away from them. Well, it's the same thing in the game of life. We need to know what tempts us. We need to look at that list of life areas that you went through. This is for the Solma students that you went through in your last assignment. And in video number 2 in your June life management maintenance sessions over at Solma. You went through the 9 different life areas. We did this. We went through the 9 different life areas and we identified the things that we need to clear out of our lives. We need to call them foul because they're foul. They are not good for us. We need to protect ourselves. We need to preserve ourselves and stay away from them. What were those things? You know what and who and where your weaknesses are. So what foul areas are you naturally drawn to? There will be people. There could be abusive people, codependent people, bullying people, toxic people. There could be places, foul places that you are naturally drawn to. It could be bars, clubs. It could be buffets. If we have eating issues, gluttony issues, things like that, then it could be buffets that we go to, restaurants. It could be around food. It could be malls. If shopping or finances, that is an area that we're naturally drawn to, a foul area for us that we need to protect ourselves or preserve ourselves from. So it could be malls. It could be those shopping areas and things like that. It could also be things. So there are people, places, and things that we can call foul. And the things that we could call foul in our lives, again, could be food. It could be alcohol. For some, it may be drugs. For others, it might be porn. It could be TV because the entertainment life area, that's one of the 9 life areas is entertainment. That is a big one because there are many things within our life area of entertainment that we can be drawn to that are foul, that we need to protect ourselves from and create boundaries to preserve ourselves and our family. It could be dating. You may be foul in your dating life. That concerns men and women or teenagers. It could be promiscuity. So those places, the things that we do, the temptations, those types of things that draw us to what hurts us or destroys us. Those are the things that we need to implement self-made boundaries where we say, I know this is not good. This is the reason why it's not good. It's not morally good. It's not ethically good. It's not honorable. It's something I need to stay away from. Whatever your reasoning is, and you know that you have the freedom then to create those boundaries for yourself and for your family because they are foul. They're out of bounds and you should not entertain them. So now when facing those specific things, we know that we can't change others. We can't expect to change the behavior of others. So we need a plan. And that plan comes into play because we are concerned with changing ourselves. We need to sometimes overcome the enemy. And I'll tell you, sometimes the enemy is us. It can be ourselves. We can be our own worst enemy. We can set ourselves up for a fall if we are not careful. And we have to learn how to set those boundaries and design them and have a plan in place so that we do not become, that we are not the reason for our fall. Now, last week, when you identified those weaknesses, I made it so that you could do that privately. I said you do not have to share, and I meant that, and you still don't even this week, because we're talking about temptations, and we're talking about things that are foul in our lives, and it may be something you're comfortable sharing, and that's fine. So if you're over at Solma and you want to get involved in the discussion, and you want to share aha moments and things like that, absolutely feel free to do that. But also realize this is deeply personal. And if you are not ready to share, you are not going to be called out and you're not going to have to right away. This is work I want you to do because we're looking inward. The first week, the second week, we looked outward. But the second week, at the last half of the second week in that teaching, you started looking inward. Because, of course, we need to protect ourselves and have boundaries from the things outside of us. But we also need to have boundaries and things that are that we create to protect us. And those are self-made. And so we need to have both. We've got to look inward in order to have that as well. So what I want you to do, I want you to go back and remember what it was last week. I want you to look at and think about the consequences for the 2 choices. What does resisting that particular temptation look like? If you resist it, if you create a boundary and you honor that boundary and you stay away from that, what does resisting that particular temptation look like? And how would giving up those things, no matter how much you want them, if you were going to give them up and you say, nope, I created a boundary, I'm not going to do it, because no matter how familiar it is, no matter how much I like it, no matter how comfortable it feels or I want it, what good is going to come out of it if I cross that line and give in to that boundary? What good is going to come out of it? The second thing I want you to consider, after looking at your list from the first week, is what does giving in to them actually look like? How would it feel for you if you gave in to crossing the boundaries that you had set for yourself? What results and consequences would or could you face for not honoring those boundaries, for the things that tempt you, for the things that are foul in your life? What kind of consequences would you face? Think about that. Now, we'll dive deeper into those two questions over at Solma. So everybody who's going to do that, go over to moveintoaction.com, log into Solma. You know how to do it. Your assignments and stuff are going to be there. So I will make sure that you have all of that. But this is something I want you to think about, is what do those things look like? What are the consequences? And if you decide to cross that boundary, how could that impact your life? The other thing I want you to look at is how could resisting those temptations help you? What would your life look like without that temptation? How would it feel to be free of that? And so that there could just be the motivation you need not to cross that line. So those are kinds of things I want you to think about. I also, if you did not participate in the Solma, what you can do, if you're just listening to this show and you're not a student over at Solma, that's fine. I want you to think about what, who, and where are your weaknesses. That's what I want you to do. I just want you to think about it. What kind of boundaries and what kind of foul areas are you naturally drawn to in your life? And what kind of boundaries could you set to keep yourself away from them? Because they're very important that we don't set ourselves up for failure, that we understand what our weaknesses are. Because when we understand our weaknesses, when we admit that we're weak, when we admit that sometimes we don't have the power to say no or to overcome them or to steer clear of them, then we can use our strength in defining solutions and putting an action plan in place and creating alternatives. So when we are tempted, we don't run toward it. We move away from it towards something that helps us be successful, to stay away from those things that are set there and are just waiting to destroy us. So I want you to think about that. All right, that's it for this episode. I'm Christine Peckstein. You can find me over at moveintoaction.com. In the meantime, get your coaching and training and see all of the episodes that I have archived over there. They're on my blog, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.